Evening, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs, and welcome to Warui Deshou's second stream. A second live stream, actually. This is the first time I think we've ever done this format live, where you can see our wonderful, beautiful faces for the first time. Or the second time.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think we did it.
Don't know where it's going.
It's okay. I think we did it for yesterday as sort of a test run. The last episode.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
that.
but that's right. You got to see like the scowl on my face every time we talked about Ro being a Crunchyroll commentator. You know,
that
was a fun time.
I enjoyed that.
Yes. But speaking of good stuff, we're here to talk about a show that you voted for. So thank you very much for picking that, and thank you for your continued support as patrons. This particular show being Deca-Dence, and wow, I mean, we had a show, we had Brand New Animal, which we've already discussed, which had a second episode twist, and then Deca-Dence was here like, you are baby show. You are a small child. Let me show you second episode twist. It was like the Hold My Beer moment. I had no idea was coming, but I'm very grateful was. So Good on Deca-Dence for doing that. Although, as I'll be discussing later, with a more potent plot twist or oh snap moment comes greater expectations and demands. So keep that in mind as we go along. But anyway, I'm of course Shadon, and joining me, from Tennessee, it's of course the Soul Doctor.
Shadon, what do you get when you throw 10 rocks at the side of a car?
10 like high speed games of Jankin. I don't know.
Deca-Dence.
I want to point something out. I know that our patrons and indeed our wider audience probably think of me as having a mild alcohol problem. A mild one at that.
Yeah.
That. Although admittedly, I am whitewashing it a little bit here. This drink, this is just Diet Coke, and after that, after that joke, I wish this had like a Deca shot of rum in it, because holy crap. That was. It's like you literally threw all 10 rocks at my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it hurt. Right. It hurt. Oh my god.
Although it doesn't exactly work, because I feel like in Japanese the pronunciation ends up sounding like Deca-Dance. So
I danced once, and then I was told never to do it again. So I've not, repeated after that point.
Oh man.
Just Go Swipe Robot has said in chat that she's drinking Diet Roller Cola, which is a British idiom for how do I put it? It's like, like how Pepsi is like is described by some people as the imitation Coke. Like it's the tier down. Roller Cola is like in the UK the tier like far below even Pepsi.
I see.
It is like like how that episode of The Simpsons had Krusty Brand imitation gruel. 9 out of 10 authors can't tell the difference. Right. Roller Cola is the soda equivalent of that.
Well, basically. we have something called Royal Crown Cola, so our own RC, if you will, Roller Cola.
That is a Roller Cola. That is a Roller Cola.
Yeah. So,
is it any good, or does it taste like bear piss?
I mean, it's been a while since I've had it. I would say it's like easily the third place soda of the sodas. I've never even had the diet version. The last time I tried it was before I quit drinking sugary soda. This has been a long time.
This could be like drinking Diet Vanilla Coke. That was a thing for a bit.
It's still a thing. There are many flavors of Diet. There are so many citrusy flavors of the Diet Coke in my local grocer. See, we have. Let me see if I can try to name them all. Ginger lime, which is very good. There's like twisted mango. I don't know why it's twisted, if it's like super edgy, but it's a twisted mango.
It's a psychotic mango. It'll cause you physical harm.
Yeah. There's like a blood orange or tangerine type.
Well, that's just to accommodate the vampire demographic. Let's be fair.
Exactly. And then there was there's a raspberry one, and then later they added a blueberry and a strawberry, which I don't remember the names for. They all have like adjectival, like twisted or like gnarly or like before. Except for Ginger Lime. Ginger Lime did not.
Trying to court the 7-Up demographic, but here we are.
Right.
God almighty. Anyway, we're not here to talk. Although, funnily enough,
not.
I'm actually rewatching the first episode of Decadence on my second monitor, and there is indeed, the Mountain Dew elements of this show, which is of course the
Right,
resource that they harvest from the monsters.
The ecto cooler.
So I've managed to bring it back around and make it relevant again. This is another one of my special skills, so I'm quite pleased with that. But anyway, we're here, of course, today to talk about Decadence, the show that I've already alluded to it before about how the second episode twist has kind of set like the social media circle of anime discussion on fire. With quite a lot of merit to it, I will say that much. I mean, it certainly caught me by surprise. I was just like,
Very surprising. What? You've heard me talk on this podcast before about how much that I loved and still love like what the fuck moments in anime, and like the higher quotient a show has of that, then usually I'm predisposed to like it more. And this was certainly one, the beginning of the second episode of like,
Madoka episode 3.
What is happening?
Madoka episode 3 still ranks pretty highly in my mind.
Oh, yeah. Totally. That was a huge one.
I mean, that made everyone lose their heads, so there you go.
Not supposed to spoil things for people.
Well, I'm just saying everyone lost their head. What did that didn't mean? Oh, God.
It is a 10-year-old show at this point. Can you believe that? Or is it 9?
Well, the only people ended up spoiling Madoka were the fans who demanded that Urabochi make a sequel to it, and he did.
Oh.
And he basically told them through that to go fuck themselves, which is the most.
Do you mean the film or the new TV show?
Rebellion.
Okay.
Rebellion.
I've heard like people like the new TV show, but I had not as ardently as the original, of course.
Well, what can meet that standard?
I mean, yeah, it's true. It was a magical show and a magical time.
It was even a magical girl show, you might say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Decadence, because this is actually our second stream format, we're not going to give full plot summaries as we normally would, although we will provide context, and indeed, for what we're going to be discussing, context is going to be key. I am going to very strongly stress, if you, dear patron, or dear viewer, if you're catching this when it's gone free to air, have not seen this show yet, we normally sometimes say, give it the free episode thing. For the sheer, mindfuckery of the second episode twist alone, don't listen to the rest of this podcast. Go watch it and then come back. I mean, it'll wait. This isn't like a carton of milk. The file will keep fresh on your hard drive or your device, wherever you may keep it. So do take the time to go watch the show, especially at least the first 2 episodes. The third, if you don't care for it at that point, you can skip. But you said you get the whoa. That's flipped and turned my world upside down. So
yeah, a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah, so spoilers are going to be coming thick and fast as we discuss our various talking points here. So don't let people spoil it for you. Take it in completely fresh and without any notion of what it might be, and it's absolutely worth it in its own right. Yeah. That's as much as I'll say on that. Anyways,
well, hey, before we get to a discussion, can I talk about the people who made the show?
Yes, because this show's. Yes, because I'll say this, right? I mean, we've obviously already covered Brand New Animal, and that's Trigger. And Trigger, they've done a really good job on Brand New Animal, in my opinion, at least in terms of its production. I mean, we can, we'll discuss the story more and more as we go along throughout that particular podcast series. But Decadence, it looks great, it sounds great, and there's clearly a lot of, Sakuga material and Sakuga fodder in this, I'm sure of it. Particularly of how Natsume's animated, so they've clearly put a lot of thought into this and a lot of craft into it, especially also with the designs of the cyborg world. Yes, please tell about the creative stuff.
Okay, so this is a show by Nut Animation Studio, Snicker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, what to make the joke you were going to make?
They've got 69 people there.
God damn it. They're very new. They were only founded in 2017. They have their headquarters as of 2019 in Kamiogi, Suganami, Tokyo, Japan. So that's where they're at. They've only the CV since they've been a studio for such a short time is pretty short. TV wise, we've got Yojo Senki. They did Saga of Tanya the Evil, the TV show, in 2017. So
Yes.
they hit the ground running in January with that show. And they ended up doing the movie follow up to that a couple years later. But additionally, they've got Furikuri Alternative that they produced for Toonami, co-produced with Production IG, and Revo Root, a company I've not heard of. And then Decadence. But the studio, of course, is sort of less interesting to me than the people behind the production. Give me just a moment here. I need to take this phone call, and we will be right back. And we're back. Sorry about that. It was a call from home, computer issue that I had to take care of. But now back to Decadence. So like I was in the middle of saying, I'm like, the studio itself is interesting because it's so new, but the creators, the individual creators behind it, I think are the thing worth paying attention to here. So like the director, Yuzuru Tachikawa, big name, important person in recent anime history, directed a little show called Mob Psycho 100 and a little show called Mob Psycho 100 2.
And by all accounts, they'll end up, directing Mob Psycho 3.
I hope so.
But I mean, come on, why have they not called it Mob Psycho 200 or Mob Psycho 300? Like,
it's to do with the percentage. That would be.
You could still have 200%. I'm supposed to go split hairs on this, honestly. Although I don't have any hairs to split, so never mind.
That's including the OAVs and, the miraculous unknown psychic, the Reagan special, all that stuff. But, he also was he did a lot of work also on Terror and Resonance, the sort of, I guess like the black sheep of the Shinichiro Watanabe catalog of like all the things that he's worked on. They're usually very beloved, Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo. He did a lot of work with Space Dandy. There's one I'm missing. The music one. Why can I not think of what it's called? The one about the jazz and the boys. What's that?
No, I was getting mixed up. I thought it was Carol and Tuesday when you said music one by.
Oh no, but there's that one too. But also like there's another music focused one that aired the same season as Suritama. Kids on the Slope is what it is. And then you have Terror and Resonance that he directed between Kids on the Slope and Carol and Tuesday. That's about like domestic terrorism, and like it has its fans, but like I think it's probably the one that's like the most meh by the community at large. But Tachikawa helped, like, he was episode director. He did storyboarding for 5 episodes. He was assistant director for a few episodes. And Death Parade and the Death Billiards film. Death Parade, like a extremely highly thought of by the people who've seen it. Unfortunately, the people who've seen it, not as big as one would like. I just noticed that he directed an episode of The Woman Called Fujiko Mine, episode 11. Good on you, mate. That's good stuff.
Thinking, like, was 11 like the horror one where Lupin wakes up in the basement in this Russian facility? The one that I was like, whoa, this is that. I don't think it is that one, to be fair, but like, well, I mean, if you're doing like work on that particular show, then you've definitely got to have caliber behind you,
Totally. So accomplished director, and on one of these projects, maybe, I don't think it was Inuyashiki, which he did the storyboards if we worked on the OP, but on one of these various projects, he crossed paths with our boy Hiroshi Seko, who is the head writer for this show, credited with series composition. Worked with
pinning the names up together, like, with the little pieces of string.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
Yes. They've definitely worked together before and crossed paths on different projects, but they've like specifically worked together as a director and writing duo on Mob Psycho, because Seko wrote Psycho, seasons 1, 2, and all of it. And then, of course, like we've kind of been following his career to a degree on this channel, because he was the head writer for the Banana Fish anime adaptation, as well as a Vinland Saga. And he actually wrote all the scripts for Vinland Saga, which is pretty rad.
Really good writer from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm. Screenplay for all the Banana Fish episodes also. And he's done stuff here and there on lots of good shows. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to mention this because I'm contractually obligated to. He did the entire scripts of Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, a good show.
I wonder why he ended up like doing work on this particular one, or like where there might be similarities between this and Cabaneri. No such thing. There's no similarities at all.
Not at all. Not at all. And just to cover our bases, so like what happens a lot of the time, the director of the show, sort of writ large, Yuzuru Tachikawa, directed episode 1. But the episode directors for 2 and 3 we'll talk about really quick. Kei Miura directed episode 2, I believe. Yes, that's correct. And it looks like Miura has not done a whole ton of episode direction. Directed an episode of the baseball anime Major, and directed an episode of Somali and the Forest Spirit, Shadon, episode 4 of that.
So, okay, cool. I'd completely forgotten about that show.
It was so pretty. That's all I remember.
It was a really nice looking show. It just wasn't really about anything, unfortunately.
Well, so that's, there's one other direction credit, but mostly Miura has been a production assistant or done this sort of like nebulous production advancement job. Again, if someone could please explain to me what that job entails, is it really just like delivering cuts back and forth between artists working at home and the studio? I could imagine it's something like that, but
yeah, I want to imagine it's him building like some sort of Rube Goldberg machine to like deliver cuts between. Like where you stick like this little thing in a tube and just goes shoots off somewhere.
And here's again another previous path crossing. Miura was the production manager for the Death Billiards short film, which is so good. I feel like if you take a few minutes to watch Death Billiards, you'll be like, all right, I'm in for Death Parade. And episode 3 is more of a veteran animator, Hideyuki Satake, who has done a whole ton of key animation. Got like Carol and Tuesday, Digimon Adventure, The Terrible Gate, the new Furikuri.
You've mentioned that in the past, and you said it every time like you're about to have some sort of like aortic spasm.
Yeah, I mean, so Gate is something I admittedly haven't seen it, but everything I have read about it is like supporting the thesis that Gate is an anime that promotes a very right-wing sort of nationalist point of view.
Oh, lovely. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And Satake did some key animation on Mob Psycho, which is, again, a place where these folks all probably met up and worked together. Did a lot on Orange, Shadon, if you remember that glorious TV show from 2016, I want to say. Something like
we've
that.
We've been doing this for a while, haven't we?
I know.
But what a lovely show. And to contrast with the other stuff like Mob Psycho, very bombastic in its action scenes, and so that's the case with Decadence here. But Orange, by contrast, was a lot more somber and also a lot more paleted, rather like you had different shades to it. Like it's not the same thing really. It's much more slow paced.
Totally.
So yeah.
This person, thinking about B&A, has worked with Trigger on a few things. Was a key animator for Ninja Slayer from Animation, and then did a lot of different jobs for 2 or 3 episodes of SSSS Gridman TV, including storyboarding, episode direction, and key animation. So, yeah, we got some people that have done good work doing more good work with Decadence.
Stuff. All right then. So with that out of the way, we're going to get straight to our patron questions. I'm going to bring these up now. We have
thank
a batch
you, Yukinon,
here.
by the way, for in chat talking about what production assistant is, But so yeah, there's a number of roles that I was curious about. Production assistant being one, production advancement being another one that again Anime News Network lists, and then production management. What you're describing seems like it could be production management, but I could also see production assistant being the sort of person who I'll read for the people who are listening on audio. So Yukinon in chat says production assistant is in charge of managing schedules for every animator, the director, and everyone else, calling them in, looking for people to help out, like outsourcing, I guess, or contract work, delivering and managing all cuts. So I was right about the cut delivery. Thank you, Shirobako, for giving me knowledge.
So, one thing you learn on the Open University course on the Kanamori, program.
Right. That's her, what are those things called? MOOC. That's her MOOC.
Yes, that's her MOOC. All right. So, with that in mind, let's go on to our Patreon questions.
Yes.
First batch here comes from Kate Rose. And it says here specifically these are based on episodes 1 and 2. And before I answer these, this is really funny that we're doing this new format where we're covering episodes in blocks of 3, which is so far working out fine. But I do find it funny that I wish we'd done, for this particular show, the episode by episode look, because you can imagine our reactions at the end of episode. Like, oh, yeah, it seems all right, this is an interesting looking post-apocalyptic show, but we've seen this stuff before. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I mean, at least I don't hate the lead character. And you get to the start of episode 2, and then we do our episode 2 podcast, and they're like, well,
this is completely different than we thought it was going to be.
Someone took the chessboard and just went, and just chucked it everywhere.
It really is that, isn't it?
It really is that. But anyway, yes, Kate says that this is specifically in relation to episodes 1 and 2. So we're going to have to discount anything we learned in episode 3. The first question is, what do you make of the symbiotic relationship between the Gadol and the system? So we need to explain what those are. In the world of decadence, it is.
Back.
I'm gonna give this a go.
Okay.
So decadence basically is the world of Borderlands, the video game. So
okay, you can't do that. I'm not familiar with the Borderlands story and lore, and I imagine many people listening are not either.
Mad Max, like, or even let's just.
Okay. You're not talking about the You're just talking about the actual environment, like the state of Earth. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
20XX. 24XX actually, but yeah.
The state of Earth is it be fucked. There you go. Mm-hmm. That's the official scale. Yeah. It's Rex, and there is a roaming fortress called Deca-Dence, which looks like, God, how best to describe it? It's basically a giant outreaching hand, but like it's the most evil looking thing.
Oh no! Shadon has frozen. No. Well, this is not good. I will restart the call momentarily. My face is going to be really large here. Oh, nope. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. They can see you. Come on, video. Show the video. There we go. Okay.
So yeah, basically it looks like a giant Megatron hand or something like that. You know. And believe it or not, the Megatron Transformers comparison is apt because this thing can turn into a giant fist. Which it really makes me think that the designers of this show thought themselves, all right, you know what? The Big O's piston punch, we like that, but we can make it humongous. We can go all in on it. Although it did make me laugh because I thought to myself, man, that would be awkward if they were pointing it the wrong way. I can imagine the turning circle on the fortress is really, really shit. All right, how long will it take us to turn this fortress?
Can it turn?
How long will it take us to turn it 180 degrees to punch the monster behind us? 5 hours? Oh shit!
Someone's at the wheel, right? And they've sort of fallen asleep. Oh shit!
No. It's like when you're driving a boat or captaining a boat, and then you see this wave coming. It's whoop, like this. You're just spinning it round and round as fast as you possibly can.
Well, what I was gonna say is it would probably be if you fall asleep at the wheel, right, and you're trying to get something like oh no, we've Decadence has passed the McDonald's. Shit, we can't get the food we're gonna get today. Basically, we have to circle around the entire Earth again to get to the McDonald's. It will be faster to do that than turn it around.
God, I hope that like there's like I mean this fortress is massive, by the way. It is really like double the size of the Technodrome from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and kind of a similar design on track treads of all things. So this roving fortress is the last bastion.
Can be seen from the atmosphere, right? It's so
large,
but yeah, go ahead.
It's a big place. This is the last bastion of humanity. We get explanations that there were like cataclysmic climate events and such that kind of rendered the Earth uninhabitable. One thing I want to point out, by the way, just as a thing to frame everything I'm telling you here about this exposition is, firstly, there's a fucking lot of it, and that is not, in my opinion, necessarily a good thing. But what is a good thing is that the way this is framed in the show proper is that it comes with a sense of, is this necessarily true?
Also, it's peppered across 3 different episodes. You don't get it all at once.
Yeah.
So you don't have a like first episode, like double episode of Fate Zero situation.
Oh, the exposition dance.
10 minutes just walking in a circle.
Excuse me while I waltz around you and explain dry shit that you don't care about.
Which, can I just say, for as much as I joke about that, I enjoyed that scene as a viewer, but it's like just such a horrible thing to do as a creative and working on the show. It's such a bad idea. So they did it differently, and in a way that was very surprising as well.
Yes, we'll come back to that later, but what is happening here is the reason that mankind has been driven into this fortress is not because of the environmental decay, but because there are now monsters roaming the earth called the Gadol, which they basically look like, the outcome of the Maiden Abyss curse. Like when you go back up top, they're like very, very alien, like blobby, morphous, like masses kind of thing looking. They've got some that are more like avian in form, like they look like giant mantises or birds.
Bugs. There's a few
bugs
with big mandibles, and they're looking like bugs from. I don't know. It reminded me of like monsters you might see in, or mutes you might see in Kipo, and Age of the Wonder Beasts.
Another thing I'd compare them to, these monsters, if you've ever seen Erica 7, and thank God I have 6, now it's paying dividends watching these shows, would you believe? Like all of the Corallians that you see in that show, the really alien-looking things like these eyes floating around, they're a lot like those as well. So we're talking that kind of thing. There's no humanoid, like, they're not humanoid, like, they're not like Zentradi from Macross. They're not recognizable, like, things. They're just misshapen creatures, like the kind of stuff that Lovecraft would do if he was also like capable of using more colors than black and gray, basically. Right. So they wander the world and basically fight off the attacks from these creatures, but Kate did rightly note there's a symbiotic relationship here because these monsters. Sorry, yes.
Oh, I was going to say. So you have seen? I haven't seen this movie, but you've seen Starship Troopers, yes?
Yes.
How similar are these monsters to Starship Troopers monsters in design? I mean, I know that it's like 3D versus 2D, but just in terms of a design point of view,
not really, because the Starship Troopers creatures are explicitly all insects, and there are certainly insectoid creatures in the Gadol, but not all of them are insectoid. Some of them are like giant worms, or even like creatures with shells on their back, like giant slugs. It's just a mishmash of
transform
things.
Too. So like even if they are like a crab in a shell, they could turn into a worm, and they're just kind of these sort of amorphous beings, or at least some of them are. There's one that looks like a large whale, I think, or I don't know. It's weird. They're cool.
Oh, it was Sin from Final Fantasy X. There you go.
Oh, Jesus.
Am I wrong though?
Honestly, it's been so long since I played it. I don't remember what Sin looks like.
Fair enough then. Well, I mean, you've not known what Sin looks like for a while, even though you're supposedly a Christian, but that's a different matter entirely. Anyway, so there is a symbiotic relationship here, and if you've ever played the video game Lost Planet, not many people will have, so I'll explain. In that video game, there were indeed a bunch of creatures found on the titular Lost Planet, which started like attacking humans, and when they killed the first one, they found they had like a thing called thermal energy, quote unquote, in them, which they could then use to power their giant mecha. And this is the same thing here, in that when you kill a Gadol, you can extract its, Mountain Dew from it, known as
Right.
Oxyone, and that is then used to power various systems in Decadence, and also the anti-grav units that the hunters of the Gadol, known as the Gears, and then to some extent the tankers as well, like they have a special. Can you see like how laborious this like expedition is? It feels a bit clunky, and I will get to it later, but like you can already see like that
Well, the way we
there's a
have to
lot
explain it is clunky in chronological order, but I feel like they like did a good because they sort of sidestepped that, right? They just kind of are like, we learned, because we learned some of this stuff through context clues and some of it through straight up narration, and some of it from the boss's point of view. And so I don't know. I feel like it's not. It's a lot to keep up with, no doubt. But like, given how complex the world is and layered, and detailed, it could have been so much worse. Like, it could have been so clunky. And,
yeah. I think that I do think it is still clunky in places, but I'm going to save my thoughts that for when we get to it. But anyway, that's the symbiotic relationship. They kill these things essentially to extract their precious fluids, blah 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 blah. To power the city, and that's what they do. So even though they want to defend themselves from these creatures, they kind of also want to draw them to them. But at the risk of giving away the big episode 2 twist ahead of time here, the Oxyone is not just used to power Decadence, it is used to power a race of cyborgs.
correct.
Which
Gears.
also is some. The Gears, yeah. Which also seems to serve
war.
as some sort of like a drug for them as well.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, I don't know.
It's the spice melange essentially from June. There you go. I
They
brought
do
that up
enjoy
again.
it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's based Mountain Dew product placement. It's got refreshing taste. Anyway, so the symbiotic relationship between these two. Kate asks, "What do we make of it?" The thing that I need to stress here about Decadence is that after the episode 2 twist, where it turns out, which I'll reveal now, so we can then use it going forward. This Decadence is basically a Monster Hunter game for this race of cyborgs. It's not a virtual world. They make a very clear point of that. It is essentially a real environment encapsulating this gigantic dome over what is called Eurasia, so Europe and Asia, basically. Although maybe this is the post-apocalyptic sequel to 1984. I don't know. But anyway, so what happens is that the Gears, these cyborgs, they have human constructs that serve as avatars in the real world. Well, not even the real world, like just the ground level, because they are the Gears themselves, the cyborgs, are real. They're not in the digital realm. They exist on a different place. So
They're
I think
aboard
the Reddit
space battleship Yamato.
Oh,
Called
yes.
Solid Quake.
Solid Quake.
Yeah.
A fan fiction character name if ever I heard it.
I know. It's great. I love it.
Yeah,
nothing
I'm
wrong
waiting
with
for the. Obviously, we're going to get like the evil ship that's going to be Liquid Quake. So there you go. Again, am I wrong?
You're not.
So yeah, this what actually happens is that basically these cyborgs compete in a ranking system to slay these monsters as entertainment. If their avatars die, they have to start over, but they're not. The cyborgs themselves don't die. So it is, for all intents and purposes, a game, just not a video game for them. But what happens to the humans in the tankers in Decadence? They are real. They do die. And they are an underclass of sorts. So that's the thing that we learn. Like, 'cause the way episode 1 is framed is that it paints it as this as a cabinary like setup where monsters, humans find monsters, try and stay alive. There's a system of warriors. It's Attack on Titan stuff. It's all diet, it's a contained thing. There's no second layer to anything like that. Doesn't seem there's anything weird going on beyond certain hints.
Yeah, I just gonna say I totally agree here with Emily in chat. Like that, I was excited about the show after episode 1 when the whole like this is a sort of online game for these cyborgs, that whole part hadn't been revealed yet, when it was just like about the sort of, last vestiges of humanity struggling to survive. And I was like, man, I have so many questions about this ship, and like, how did they build it? And like,
that's the problem.
why is there no crime? But what did you say?
We've been there before, though. That's the problem.
They've been there before?
We have been there before.
Oh, yeah, no. But they answered all the questions. Like, the twist totally, like, what is the ship? I mean, the ship was built by the system, like, for entertainment purposes.
One specifically, though. And I'm just saying, like,
yeah. It was exciting.
I was into it at least because, like, I didn't get the immediate whiff of, Frank's bullshit. I'll just call it what it is. But yeah, I'm in agreement. Just to bring it back around to... Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, like, so what you're talking about, and then Yuki mentions it in chat also, the similarity to Frank's, like, it was there, but, I mean, Natsume is so much more likable than anyone in that show.
Infinitely.
And the boss is an interesting non-kid, non-teenager character, and the world seem to be so much more interested in the small details of the world, even in the first episode, than Frank's ever was. So, like, superficially, there definitely are structural similarities, but in execution, I think I was even more, like, I know what you're saying after we watched the first episode of Frank's, like, whoa, what's the deal? Like, what's going to happen? But I feel like stepping back from the episodes, right? Like, I think this is a better first episode, even thinking about it like in isolation.
Mm-hmm. So just to circle back around to Kate's point though about this being a symbiotic relationship, the reason I bring up the episode 2 thing is because it primes us as the audience to not necessarily entirely trust what we know. Because the boss you mentioned, is it Kasaragi his name is? I think it is.
I don't think that there's a Kaburagi, I think is what it is.
Kaburagi, there we go. Yes, sorry, Kaburagi. Kaburagi, like, he himself is a cyborg with this avatar of the boss. So that plays into his character. But it comes clear that there is even like a dissatisfaction he has with his role, which is something I'll discuss when we get to the whole like class structure and kind of that kind of element of this. But because of that, there's always going to be that undercurrent since episode 2 of we shouldn't necessarily trust what we know and shouldn't necessarily trust what we're told. So, okay, the backstory of the climate fell to shit. I disagree with that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing about the show, but I'm saying the climate looks pretty okay to me, But also, where did these monsters come from? Were they seeded there for a particular reason, Like, there could be any number of ways in which they came about. So one has to wonder, like, how did this symbiotic relationship come about? What put them in place? The show's already got you thinking about that. Like, how does this all work? Like, we've already had one curtain pulled back to reveal what's behind it, but how many more curtains are there? And that
how many curtains are there?
And that question of what do you make of the symbiotic relationship is a part of that, and that I currently can't conclusively answer that because I don't trust what we've been told as being accurate. I mean, that whole thing, the exposition about the climate going wrong. We get that in, I think it's the second episode, I believe, after third one. But it's been like played over a PA for the cyborgs inside the ship. But the thing is, like, the way that comes across to me, it feels almost like, totalitarian, like, propaganda. Like, this is the established history of the world, and we're going to keep telling
you. Here's a cute animation of the climate death of the planet.
Well, that's it. Like, there's also the aesthetics of, like, totalitarianism. Like, we're trying to make this thing palpable and syrupy for you.
Yeah.
So that all plays into it. So my answer
and at the end of that story of apocalypse, it's like, have a profitable day. Boom, boom, boom.
And everyone, of course, slots into place and plays their part in this system, making up the symbol of decadence. See also the OP where K, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Kaburagi.
Kaburagi.
I think.
I almost said Cabaneri.
Cabaneri, Mr. Cabaneri.
Let's call it Mr. Cabaneri. So Kaburagi, like he himself, like in the OP, as his cyborg, shape, slots into place like a Tetris block with everyone else, because that's meant to show you have a place that you have a specific place for you, and you will fit in. So keep all that in mind. But the symbiotic relationship, don't know what it currently is really, because it could be like, who knows? Maybe it was put in place like literally to farm it. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, this is a really interesting angle that you've taken about kind of not trusting the history that we're given. Yeah, that's so good. Because clearly, right, I mean, the gears to play their game aboard this gold saucer-like ship known as the Deca-Dence, they need this energy, and so they need to sort of continually supply themselves with what are the enemy creatures called?
The Gadol.
Gadol. They need like a steady stream of...
Not Gal Gadot. They're not fighting Gal Gadot. Not fighting Wonder Woman.
Gal Gun, double piece. They need, the monsters. And so it's funny, like, I think what you're saying is echoed a lot in what Kaburagi tells Natsume in episode 1, before we even know, like, sort of the partial truth of what's going on. When she's saying, I want to be a soldier. And he's like, why? And she says, I want to put it into the fighting. And this is when they're drinking at his house. And he's like, don't you know the fighting's never going to end? It's never going to stop.
Because he knows.
It's going to, yeah, exactly. Because he, like, and at the time I wrote this huge note, like, about, like, these are competing ideologies of, like, the young person wants change, and, like, you have the old person who's lived through it, who's just, like, maybe even trying to protect her. It's like, no, like, aren't you satisfied with your lot in life and all? But that is, like, kind of, I think, missing the mark. Like, he actually knows the legit information, right? It's not just like that he's a pragmatist. He's like, look, like, I know the fighting's never going to end, because I understand that the Gadol and the system sort of need each other. And sort of how humans play their part in it is interesting. I really like that you kind of like enter the story and you think it's the story about humanity, but by the end of episode 3, it's like, our part in this is so minimal. I mean, Natsume, of course, is going to be the eyes through which we see all of this, and the main character kind of forging her way ahead spunkily. But in, like, the grand scheme of things, humans are just so, like, an afterthought. It's so
cool.
Cool.
I think there's more to the human involvement in this story, but I'll come into that in a little later when because shouts to KVIN, I'll just call it Kevin. Sakuburo's like lead curator. I'll say they because I don't know their pronouns. They noted that it seemed they suggested it was like the most anti-capitalist anime since Kaiji, and I agree it's anti-capitalist, but I don't know if it's necessarily the most since Kaiji. I think Kaiji is. But anyway, we'll come back to that in a bit.
It could have been. Why can I not remember the name of the show? Why can't I remember the Ikuhara show about Capazon? That could have been it.
No, that's Sarazanmai.
Yeah, thank you. I could not remember the name Sarazanmai. It could have been Sarazanmai, but that was not to be.
Okay.
That was about other cool things. I agree. That's a great point. Like, I actually super, super agree with that. I mean, I'd have to think about other anti-capitalist anime, but I do, what the sort of key point in the message that this is a really fucking anti-capitalist anime. Like, I totally agree with that point. Do you agree with this point?
Well, I actually have some specific examples of scenes in the show that illustrate that I'll come back to.
Totally,
but also some criticisms of where it doesn't go far enough to actually meet that. That's why I disagree with Kevin's points to some extent. That I agree it is anti-capitalist, but I don't think it's in the same league as Kaiji.
Okay, I want to hear both sides of this argument later. So
I will
regale me.
I will regale you, but first we have more questions. So this
Okay.
is coming from Kate Rose as well. What does it mean that decadence isn't a virtual world, but is somehow playable by something that looks like a virtual world? The easiest and quickest comparison I can make to explain this is it's basically like the Matrix. And I'm not saying the Matrix is in the I mean, as in the whole setting, like, and the wider implications of the Matrix, where we need an energy source and we need a means for which for it to be harvested. The energy source is in the real world, but the means for which we harvest it and keep the people like docile, as castle, if you want to call it that, or even farmers, is by having a virtual world in which we gamify it.
Right, and I think this is another instance of the show urging us to like not trust what we think is real, or at least it makes me sort of question what's real, because
free your mind.
Right. Well, you were talking about like not trusting the narration of the history, right? And you know, and kind of being skeptical of what you're presented with by the show as fact. And I mean, I think this is a huge part of this, the flip from episode 1 to 2 is in episode 1, all these things that look incredibly realistic are sort of not realist. They're avatars, like, you know, like, and a lot of the stakes are kind of, really diminished and everything like that. And what turns out to be super real are these really silly, cutesy, looking like cartoony robots. Those things are supposed to be more real than, you know, the really like lovingly detailed drawing of Kaburagi. It's like that's a bit weird, and that's the kind of the mindset that I think you're supposed to like. It will be good to approach the rest of the show with. It's like, what's real? Gamification. What's real here?
It's gamification, Doc. Like, you know, we like the cyborgs themselves are an exploited class, which I'll get to later.
Yeah.
If you think about it. But they're obviously like, you know, in these like cutesy anime avatars like you would find in like an online game where, you know, it's kind of like chill, you know, the environments are pretty like chilled out and cartoony, Habbo Hotel style, if you want to call it that kind of thing. But remember the scenes, of course, involving Inferno Cube, you know, or whatever you want to call him.
Right. Yes.
Oh, by the way, if you think I'm going all to in on this, like, you know, there is a system and it must be followed. I don't remember this gentleman's name, but he's one of the most famous voice actors in anime. He's the gentleman who voices Dio in JoJo's. He's the Cube, the Overlord guy. I don't remember his name offhand. He also voices Zato 1 in Guilty Gear. Do you want to know who he also voices that springs to mind, like, you know, a rigid dogmatism and adherence to a system? Or, you know, that would be Toga from Revolutionary Girl Utena.
Oh, yeah.
How many speeches
I recognize
do we hear,
that now that you mentioned
how many speeches do we hear of him in Utena saying we've got to break out of the shell and all that?
Right.
And in this one, he has a dogmatic refrain, which is, all bugs must be eliminated.
Right.
Repeat after me. All bugs must be eliminated.
Yes.
So, if you told me, by the way, that they picked him to voice that character specifically because he had been in that Hikara work, which was all about systems and such, I would buy that. I would absolutely buy that. So, yeah, not a coincidence, in my opinion. All right. Do you have anything else to add to Kate's question on that about the relationship between decadence to virtual and being playable? I mean, to me, like I say, it's basically the base of the Matrix, I would say.
Yeah, I think that my main point, I already stated that it's like it puts you in the state of not really knowing or believing what's really real.
I'll expand on that by just saying, though, like the reason that capitalism, as we understand it, allows its exploitation to happen is because it gives people an illusion that makes it seem like what they're doing or what they're having to go through is not necessarily as bad as it really is. That's how you get people arguing against free healthcare, for example. So there's your allegory there, you know. All right, next question. What do you make of the relationship between Kaburagi, someone ultimately ruled by the system, and Natsume, someone completely outside the system's control? I need to give a bit of context for this. The reason Natsume is, to borrow a term from the Lego movie, and yeah, this is also a thing about breaking out from systems, funnily enough, is This is basically the Lego movie again. The reason she is the special is because through a system glitch, it was believed she was dead due to an incident that happened when she in the opening episode where they were attacked by Gadol, like when she was traveling with her father, who was scavenging for parts. And she did, as we learn in the later episode, die for a bit, like she was dead, being
clinically,
yeah. But then she came back to life, and for some reason the system did not pick up that she was back. So her entry in the database has always been that she's dead.
Yeah,
and
that
so
chip. All humans are chipped apparently at some point, and the chip, fucked up when she came back to life. It did not come back on.
Yep. So she is a glitch. She is outside the system. She cannot be tracked by them as a result. By the way, the bugs that DO was referring to was DO Cube, Toga Cube, whatever you want to call them. The bugs that he was referring to were these humans whose chips fail. And also through the graphics that we see, other cases where, for example, the humans see the cyborgs as they actually normally look in their have a hotel form. Mm-hmm. That was one of the graphics there. So that kind of thing. Essentially, any person that could reveal the truth of the world to help maintain the deception.
Interesting.
So Kaburagi's role is to find these people who have the faulty chips or who are a threat to the illusion that they all live in, this collective lie, and kill them or extract their chips. I'm not clear if he kills them or not, but I'm just going to assume that he does. It's the simplest way.
Yeah, and I think it might even be the bug thing could even be broader than that.
All bugs in the system.
Yeah, that Kaburagi's sort of removing the chips of people that are problematic in some way. I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know, that it was more than just chips failing. In fact, I would think that the failing chips would be a very rare occurrence, very anomalous. That Pipe and Natsume would be two of the first ever, if not the first ever, for it to happen, rather than it just sort of happening continually.
Pipe isn't chips, but Pipe is a bug in their own right.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
that's right. It can't be chipped because
he's a Gadol.
Yeah. But Natsume, just because if the chips were failing all the time, I mean that would just I don't know. Maybe that's part of the point in the theme is this society seems so great, but it doesn't have it all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, there were more examples in that graphic of people who are considered bugs, not because their chips have failed, but because they discovered something. Essentially, you've got to kill people who learn too much. So to me, the relationship here is that Kaburagi, we get through a bit of his backstory where he himself is exploited by the system and restrained by it. There are even restraints placed on their actual physical avatars, which could be removed through the use of a limiter. And that is a big no-no because it results in the entire group of top rankers when this happens being disbanded and some of them outright being executed.
Yeah, they're scrapped, whatever that means, right? I mean, their green juice brain blob thing is removed and their body dropped down a seemingly bottomless shaft. I don't know if it means they'll be recycled or they will appear in the society and be different people, but it seems to be a sort of permanent erasure of whatever their selves are, right? I mean, otherwise, why would Mikey? Mikey, I think, is such an interesting character. And why
he wants to break out. He wants to break out and be more than he is limited to being.
Yeah, he gives them this speech, right? Of before I became a top rank player, I was content to live my life, do my part, and get scrapped, and all for the system. And then I became a top ranker, and I don't want to do that now. I don't want to be scrapped. So yeah, I mean, it seems like it's being scrapped. I'm curious if it will kind of allude more to the mechanics of what that is.
I can expand on that because Kaburagi himself constantly has this warning message pop up in his saying lifespan coming to an end or something to that effect. Like, there's only so long that you can be a cyborg for. Like, you have a finite lifespan.
You
But
got to
something to
keep
know about
drinking the juice.
that's true. So the thing about Decadence is that it's very clearly as a show establishing a lot of constraints, both in terms of systems and structures, the ranking system, the jobs that are assigned to the tankers, where even they have a hierarchy despite the fact they're all menial work. Then of course you've got the construction of the cyborgs themselves and how long their finite lifespan is, that kind of thing, and then of course people straining against that. But everyone has a place as per that OP.
Right.
No one needs to be outside of it. So I think that this whole idea of Kaburagi like having this relationship with Natsume, who is outside the system, it could very well be a vicarious thing where she can fully do what he cannot, which is actually break free.
Mm-hmm.
I should add, by the way, that Kaburagi, he actually was a top ranker as well, and that's how he was able to fight so well. But he was then demoted because of his involvement in the limiter breaking incident to becoming an armor repair guy by day, helping fix the outside of Deca-Dence's hull, and by night being someone who hunts down bugs. This is also why his avatar changes from someone who's got like the colored red skin, I think it might be blue,
Blue hair.
to blue hair, to what he looks like now, which is a regularish dude, So yeah, that I think might be why he's doing it, because, well, in fact, no, he says as much. Like, I want to see if a bug can survive in this world. Clearly, he himself has not been able to escape the confines of his role in life, and also the confines of his actual body, because he is a cyborg after all. There are limitations placed on what he can do and such. So maybe it's a vicarious thing. If I can't do it, I can certainly instruct someone how to do it, and then get some pleasure out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the game that they're playing aboard the Decadence is meant to, if we're going to take the whole anti-capitalist bit here, I think it is meant to be analogous to, or sort of broadened out and thought about in more broad terms, like thinking about society as gamified, right, by people that structure it. And people that want you to buy things and, gamify your life. At least that's what helps me make a little bit more sense of Kaburagi sometimes, because it seems odd to me when watching it initially how disillusioned he was over like a game. You know what I mean? Like, he was like willing to like let his body, his cyborg self, like die because he was disillusioned over things that happened in the game. I mean, granted, like his whole team was scrapped and he was having to sort of run around in this real / simulation, like doing shitty things. But I think, him and Natsume, their relationship is so cool because like, she is in this totally unique position to have an influence and effect on him. And, he says, like, you saved me. Even though the system tells me that you have no value. Because according to the great big AI that assigns everything its value, you're dead. You don't mean anything, and yet you mean something to me. And what a huge kind of revelation that is for him.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
I'm just going to point to some stuff in chat. Yukinon and Go with Silent Robot are discussing the idea of, is this legitimately entertainment or is it a job? And that's why I'm saying about gamification, because you can make even the most like menial and awful and terrible work like more engaging by gamifying it. Let me pitch an idea to you here.
And you can also make games a job. People that play Final Fantasy 14 and Craft, why do you do it? It's not fun.
Oh, at least they ain't EverQuest anymore, But imagine this example, right? Let's say that you have a very large office block. Obviously, we live in time now where that's not necessarily the case anymore. But imagine you have a very large office complex, or even, let's say, a mall, and you've got a number of restrooms in there. You obviously need people to clean these restrooms. So how do you incentivize, doing that right? You can gamify it.
Badges.
Yeah. Here's how many did you clean in an hour? How well did you clean them? There's a ranking table here of who's done the most in this amount of time. Simple stuff like that already exists in a lot of companies is gamification of a sense, because it provides a sense of structure and competition. It forces you to focus your efforts against each other to try and prove that you're better than them at others for the rewards that come as a result. I mean, ranking in Decadence, the show that is very clearly seen as a thing of prestige.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's what Mikey speaks of, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Totally.
think that it absolutely is a job, because it comes with very severe punishments, like of a dystopian nature, where they're flat out executed if they fail or stray from the rules. I mean, if it was a game, they'd get banned. Oh no. But they literally get executed.
Right.
They get fucking executed here.
But
sorry, go ahead. It is also, them harvesting an actual in-universe natural resource that powers this whole thing.
Yeah.
And keeps them alive, for that matter.
So, I think it began sorry, I keep interrupting you. You go ahead.
If you compare Oxine to food,
mm-hmm.
there's your like puzzle piece that makes you realize it is a job. Because if they don't do it, they die.
Yeah, or it's just your life at that point.
Mm-hmm.
If you're competing for food, right, and your nourishment and your very sort of existence is on the line, like it just becomes your life, right? And I mean, it's probably marketed as a game rightly because, it's like you're in an online game. But as, someone who like was a WoW player for a long time, I mean, like people, these things get their hooks in people, and people begin devoting more and more and more time to doing things in it that may not, I mean, some of it's probably fun, but some of it's probably not. I mean, some of it's probably fucking tedious. And so I think this is an interesting point that's gotten brought up here, because there can be a bit of a blurring of the line between game and job and sort of, game rank and like real life prestige. Because people can take that shit really seriously. And it can consume your life. So
I work in a company where I don't personally actually engage in any selling of products. That's not my job. But we do have a division that does do selling. And of course, there are scoreboards, there are competitions, there are rewards, incentives for either being the best salesperson in general or meeting a certain target in a certain time frame. You name it. These things exist, and that's what Decadence is doing here. It's showing this system in place as a game, but making you realize that these things already kind of exist, because it's analogous to what happens in real world jobs and groups and companies. Okay, we've got more questions to cover. All right. So the next one comes from Kate Rose, and this is based on episode 3 specifically. How did your understanding of the world of Decadence change after seeing the historical explanation? I'm going to repeat my previous point. I don't trust any of it. I think it's all dogma. I think that we'll find out later that whatever destroyed the world is not simply climate change, or even what brought the Gadol into existence might not be that they just appeared one day. If you told me, for example, that they tried to create this life form that gave them a sustainable energy source that created the Oxine, and then it kind of got loose and spread into the wild, that's a theory, Mm-hmm. But I think, again, like with all the explanations that the show has given, I think that the exposition has been clunky in places because there's been so much of it, that at least it's keeping you on your toes by making you think, like, once you've been primed for that through the episode 2 twist, oh, wait, do I trust this or not?
Yeah. The most unrealistic thing about the show is that it says it took until the 25th century for climate change to destroy the Earth. It's going to happen in this century. It's going to happen in the 21st century.
Yay! Oh God!
I mean, maybe the total destruction that sort of when they show in their little animatic, the brown Earth, maybe that won't happen for a few hundred years. But
speaking of the animatic, by the way, just a small side point. I love again how this show is using like these cartoons presented to the cyborgs as a way of softening history.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
I mean,
100%.
I mean, let's put it this way, right? Let's say that you were doing a documentary on. Let's go for the throat here. Let's make this as awful as possible. Let's say you're doing a documentary on Auschwitz. Okay, let's say you're doing a documentary on the Holocaust. How do you do it? Do you do it as archive footage with interviews of actual survivors? You can, yeah, I would argue so. Or would you do it the decadence way, which is here's a horrific thing in history, let's do it in cartoon format.
I guess it depends on what your angle is with the documentary, right?
Well, that's it. But like, but
Right.
obviously, we
Yeah.
we as savvy people and audience members would think to themselves, this is a bit suspect that this history is presented in such a cartoony way, and that again is because of this beautiful twist where, like, I'll say now, like one of the things I like about the twist is not just the twist itself is exciting and interesting, but it perfectly primes the audience for everything that's to follow. Your world has been flipped, turned upside down, to borrow a quote from Fresh Prince there. And now you're constantly thinking to yourself, like, what am I being presented with? Is this true? Is this factual? Should I trust it? How much of it even is true? Like, it's not a case of it, this is all lies and this is all truth. There's a blend of it in there somewhere. Because clearly the world has come to an end.
Right.
But what's the specifics of that?
Yeah. So what did I think about it? I hope that it is at least partially true. Just I'm open to it being propaganda, but and specifically, because there could be like way more to it, right? But I kind of was digging the fact that like in the background of everything that's happening, there's like this element of like social responsibility, that theme there, because everything we see for the first couple of episodes and into episode 3, by episode 3, like we understand sort of the plight of humanity, what it has been reduced to, what human life is like in this world. And we hear that human beings caused that. And so I don't know. I mean, I know this is very common for this kind of fiction, but it's still something that I enjoy. And I think it can hit home more in stories like this because you're not just saying, well, the planet was ruined by, environmental damage that humans did, and it was awful. And it's talking about it in broad strokes, like there was an apocalypse or humanity. It's like you really see down and dirty what human civilization has become. And I think after seeing that, realizing we did it to ourselves, that's a pretty effective 1-2 punch. And so I like that part of it, but I am, as I say, open to there being more to it.
All right, final patron question. This one comes from Gogo Atomic Robot, and we've probably already kind of covered this, but I'll mention anyway. Based on episode 1, how successful do you feel Decadence is at setting up its world premise, and why? And if this is just based on episode 1, like, considering it in the vacuum, we need to mention that although the twist comes at the start of episode 2, and by the way, comes kind of just out of nowhere, which I think is actually the one of the few times I'll say that's a good thing because it completely sucker punches you. But to go back to episode 1, there are hints that things are off. Like, we see, for example, a scene of Kasaragi like looking at Natsume, and then we cut to his view, but his view's got like this Google Class UI over it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
at
where's
the time,
this
I was like,
from?
What? What?
And then also the ending of episode 1, we see they have a hotel, like, Cyborg Land. And like, fuck's this? What the hell is this Willy Wonka shit? So again, am I wrong? That's why I ask you.
It's amazing.
But I think that insofar as like establishing the world well, I think the first episode does a fine job. It even like sets up a lot of other hints because people in chat mentioned that the Decadence logo was found by Natsume's father, but do you want to know what he also found? He found the dead and like worn out shell of an old cyborg. Like because there was like the TV screen that's then gone. So he almost uncovered the truth. Almost. But I want to give also props to the actual episode for setting up character traits. Because Natsume, like, the first thing she does is picks up like this scorpion with no real fear, which I think goes to show like that she's not really so afraid of these creatures, but more is like overly curious. And like we also get Katsuragi. So I am of the opinion. I think the first episode does a good job. I mean, it in fact it even seems to be structured in such a way as to be conventional for our tastes. Like
Hmm.
it ends on the big piston punch. Like that to me feels like while the credits roll, that feels to me like a very deliberate setup for what would otherwise be a standard. I say standard, quote unquote, version of the show where there is no twist that there is a secret, world behind the world. There is a wizard behind the curtain of this
Right.
art that we're in.
Yeah.
Um, but that, like, okay, you get the big piston punch, and you know what? We're going to bring that back, and you're going to see these guys fighting Attack on Titan style, and it's all going to be great. Which I want you to keep that in mind because this is when I get to the point about anti-capitalism and why I actually think it falls apart a little bit on a meta level. Just
Okay.
pop down your skull for a second there. But
Popped.
yeah, I am. I mean, also like we get it very well realized in terms of the necessary upkeep and maintenance of decadence as well. Like you've got to clean all this shit off the walls. When
Hmm.
there's a fight, there are actual consequences, downtime, and repair to it, which is certainly welcome. Um, so yeah, I think it does a fine job. I think that there is a lot of exposition to take in, and that's why I think that watching this week on week is probably preferable than binging it because like you'd probably get really bored of the exposition real fast. And I'm hoping they do tone it down now. Like I don't
Hmm.
I mean, when I say exposition and tone down, I don't mean as in like, oh, you've learned something new that, and then that changed everything. I'm talking about like exposition specifically to set the table. I don't mind exposition being like, rolled out if we've then flipped the table and now there's a new status quo, but there shouldn't be like reams and reams of it to get the very first status quo set up at all. I'll actually answer that point that Gogo Tyro was playing in chat, which is I wonder why they need humans to play the game. That's the thing. They are the underclass that keeps decadence going. They are the toilet cleaners, they are the mechanics, they are the essentially the people doing the grunt work. Um, and I'll also elaborate. Okay, we have the gears, which are of course the avatars of the cyborgs doing the fighting, but they do allow a certain number of humans as tankers to also take part. And
Hmm.
do you want to know why I think that is? I think that's a part of the wider illusion.
Yeah,
It's a
totally.
thing.
Yep.
It's a career advancement path.
Hmm.
Like we have a direct involvement with the fight that's going on here. There's only a few of us, but we're all like. I mean, this is also Natsume being suckered in the same way that Katsuраgi's, where there is a human tanker named Kurenai who is in her own right really, really good. Like she is being drawn into the fiction of this hero in a almost Vinland Saga kind of way. Um, which is why I want to fight to be like her, like as opposed to I want to fight because I want to help humanity.
Yeah, they
You
they
know,
need them for like sort of out of game reasons, like keeping things clean, like you said, and taking care of weapons and all that kind of thing. But like you were saying, they throw them in game so that there can kind of be this like aspirational component to their lives. They can dream big, right? I mean, Natsume didn't seem like this complete fool. She seems like not like an unrealistic person. By that I mean, what am I trying to say? She doesn't seem like a fucking like main character of a shonen show who's just like some random nobody who's like, I will be the greatest ninja in the universe or whatever. Like her aspiration, she seems like more grounded than that. And the fact that she's like, I want to help fight so I can end the fighting. It seems like something that like sort of through the educational system, like that's the kind of goal that they're given to aspire to. And yeah, I mean, until she talks to her boss, she doesn't see it as this weird thing. She's like, of course I want to do this. Like, why would I not want to try to help end the fighting? So yeah, agreed.
absolutely. Right. Do you have anything else to add on that question, Doc?
Oh, I think it did a great job setting things up. So I binged the show. I did not grow weary of the exposition, but as I said earlier, I'm someone who could tolerate the Fate Zero double episode. But like, I didn't think it was, objectively speaking, nearly that bad. I mean, I love the way it's structured. Setting up the world, giving it to us in doses. Sizable doses, but doses nonetheless, rather than all at once. It shows, in my opinion, that this is a planned out show, which is different from many anime who kind of are going week to week a lot of times with the story if they're not adapting anything. It shows that there's like a vision and a plan, at least partially. Hopefully, I have faith that there's one all the way to the beginning, all the way to the end.
I said before, about how this is now flips everything up. This second episode revelation, so expectations have been substantially raised as a result of that. I will put on the table now that I am really, really intrigued by Decadence. I think it's got some very strong messages that I also wish it kind of was more refined about. But by God, it's got to deliver. We have to I want to come out of this anime feeling like $1,000,000 because it really has delivered on the promises it set up here, as opposed to the twist existing for an oh shit thing. A big twist like that in its own right can just simply be for audience engagement, not for anything of substance.
Oh, it already it has
shown that
there's more to it than that, I feel.
Yes, but it now needs to deliver on that all the way to the end.
I mean, sir, I think it has designs to, I think
it certainly has a lot of potential, I would agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so talking points. Let's get into the anti-capitalist stuff here.
Okay.
And I also want to talk a bit about Natsume as a character who is physically disabled, because something we've not elaborated on is that she has a cyborg hand. She is basically the Imperator Furiosa of this anime, if you've ever watched Mad Max Fury Road. Because she lost her arm in the original attack that we mentioned in the opening moment of episode 1, and she has a prosthetic hand. Now,
that gets upgraded to a Mega Man hand.
I'll come to that in a moment.
Yeah.
I'll come to that in a moment. But I actually was initially quite cold on this, and I'll tell you why. Because I should stress, by the way, for people listening who may not know who I am or may even not be watching, I am a fully abled man, so I don't have a physical disability. Baldness does not count. I know I like to joke about it, but it does not count. So I would actually strongly urge that if you do know of someone who is watching the show who is physically disabled, maybe ask them for their opinion on how it handles this as well, rather than just sticking to my own. But my initial thought was I felt quite cold on this because Natsume's cyborg hand, we don't get to see any way in which it is legitimately a detriment to her work. To which your answer will of course be, well, it isn't a detriment, and that's the point.
Until episode 3, when her job has changed, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, not her scrubbing work.
Yeah, it seems to be that she was getting along just fine without any difficulty. But what I found really interesting about the fact that you allude to that she gets an upgraded hand is that it just happens. She just gets it. I thought it was going to be an ongoing struggle that she would try and overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I can't use this thing properly. It's clunky. It's kind of useless. And then maybe in its own way, you could see how that was actually a benefit to her because she was physically stronger as a result. I mean, we've seen plenty of shows say, for example, Trigun, where Vash has a cyborg hand, and that comes out pretty handy for him. There are many different ways you can use it situation that would be handy. But I thought, okay, going to be an ongoing thing, I hope, because this is an interesting thing we don't see often with characters in anime. And then she gets an upgrade hand that is superior every way. It actually has the accurate number of fingers and thumbs, because she only has 3 originally. And I initially thought, well, that's shit, because we've literally skipped past all of the interesting stuff I thought was happening with her struggling with that, and then showing that it wasn't a problem to be disabled in that way, because let's be honest, it isn't. And then I realized the ease of which that she got that upgrade is, to borrow the show's terminology, it's not a bug, it's a feature, because it was so easy for her to get that it goes to show how the society won't provide for people the things that they need. And I thought that was really neat when I thought about it. There's nothing physically stopping anyone from giving her a proper cyborg arm rather than the shitty one that she was given. So I thought that was pretty neat.
That was awesome.
But the other thing I want to know.
Still on this topic? Well, I have stuff to say on the hand, but do you want to still talk about her hand?
If you've got stuff to say about the hand, then we'll talk about it, but not to it. So yeah, please say other stuff about the hand.
No, yeah, just I really enjoyed when she and Kaburagi had the talk about it. That she came over to his place just to talk about it. And, you know, she's had people in her life tell her that it's going to hold her back, that it's her weakness. But the fact that she still loves it. Like, it's still part of her identity, you know, because she's been through so much with it. It's helped her in spots. It's just been with her throughout most of her life. Is I think really kind of accurate. Like, from what I know, I too am fully able. But I was reading a really great thread on Twitter of sort of ableist kind of tropes in stories and kind of ways to avoid them and how disabled people think about their disability. And the writer was trying to get across the notion to people that, like, lots of disabled people, I know it's weird for you able people to think this, but they might actually not want to be cured because, you know, quote unquote cured, because their disability it like informs who they are, and it's just been a part of their life so much that it's just sort of, I don't know, maybe akin to you getting some kind of huge change to your body. You know, you wouldn't want to do that. And so, yeah, I saw that reflected here in Natsume and how she felt about something that she sort of understands is a detriment to her, as looking through the lens of her as a fighter, because she can't turn the little switch or gear or whatever that she needs to turn fast enough to maneuver in the way that Kaburagi would like her to. And yeah, I love, like you said, that then Kaburagi just does this. It's like, you know what? This is not the problem. This is not a problem. You just need better care. Like, you've been given shit care.
You should be given that from the start. And that's true of real life. Like, you know, wheelchair ramps, for example, were not as ubiquitous as they are now. At some point in our history, you know, like, it was thought that it was just not worth it. It was, you know, too much hassle to put them in place. And then, of course, we have things like unseen disabilities, where that's become more of a known thing now. Like, you know, you see them, for example, on the entrances to restrooms. And even then, going back to wheelchair ramps, they're still not everywhere they should be. But that's, again, tying into the anti-capitalist thing, in that, why don't we put, you know, more measures in place to make life easier for disabled people? Because it costs too much money. Capitalism sucks.
And so why would you outfit the world for a minority of people? It doesn't make economic sense, right? Not just that it costs, because if it costs a lot of money to do something for the abled population at large, it would probably be done because there's so many abled people that it would make sense. But well, there you go. There it is.
So that's one of the anti-capitalist things. The other anti-capitalist thing I will mention, since this ties into it somewhat as well, is I want to talk about the commodification of human suffering. This is a small thing. This is a topic. This is a small thing, but it kind of blew my mind. So Kaburagi, like, he, you know, when he realizes that he can't actually scan Natsume, because he's a smart individual and credits them for fleshing out his characters this way, he investigates. So he starts looking her up on a database and can't find her, and then he finds out she's dead. But what we then find out at the start of, I think it was episode 3, is that it turns out, and this ties into it being an entertainment thing to some extent, video footage exists of Natsume's death. Like, and this is in a library of video footage, so it seems that somehow Deca-Dence, the city or the place, is recording footage of all of the goings on. And I want to note, by the way, that a number of the human tankers actually die in these 3 episodes. They are double D dead. They don't come back like the actual cyborg avatars do, right?
Yeah.
And that's important, because if you then extrapolate from that, like their deaths have also been recorded as well. So how do you feel then if I were to tell you that you can buy that with the in-game currency? That's how he accesses this footage. It's not like him, imagine, like, in fact, just to
Yeah.
put it out there, like, imagine if for detective work, rather than you accessing like CCTV through freedom of information requests or as part of police database, that, oh, you know what, it's just on YouTube and you can pay £5 to watch this person be brutally murdered.
And you could pay to own it, right? Because like once he buys it, doesn't it then say like sold out? Like then you own the footage. It's not publicly available anymore.
Well, if that is true or not, the point still stands. Like,
Sure.
the suffering that the humans go through in the Decadence, the show, is shown to be something that is sold on an open market for in-game currency, ostensibly for the entertainment of the cyborgs. Like, I could see, like, in a side thing, like, do you remember Donatello, like the big raging pig guy?
Yeah.
I could totally see him, like, spending his hard-earned in-game currency on watching footage of regular humans be murdered by the Gadol.
Yeah.
For his own kicks.
Yeah.
And again, like, how insane is that this system allows it? It's such a small thing though, because it only is used in the story as an investigative means for like Kaburagi to like find the truth out about Natsume's death and like the fact that she came back to life. But the fact that it was ever on sale in the first place kind of just blew my fucking brains out. I was like, holy shit. That's such an amazing world building detail, and it really goes to show how fucked up this system is.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that the footage is publicly available until someone doesn't want it to be, because that's how he sort of erased Pipe's existence from the public database. So he just bought that footage of Pipe, and it's used for good reasons there. But like you're saying, it's the fact that it's there sort of implies a whole host of really awful, like terrible actions.
Where does that observation also end? I mean, is it just a battle footage? Do they get to watch like videos of like the humans doing their day-to-day business inside the tank?
Yes.
Do they? Yeah. Does that? How far do you want to take that? How far do you want to take this like surveillance state and the invasion of privacy? Holy shit! It's horrifying the more you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything the cyborgs see is probably taped and publicly available to buy. Again, because he buys that footage of Pipe, of him discovering Pipe on the hull of the ship, and yeah, I mean, it's bonkers. I mean, the humans clearly don't know about it, just like we don't know about the surveillance state that's happening to us right now.
Yeah.
Being watched.
But that's also, because that's purchasable for money, that's another capitalist thing. Like, how it's a very explicit like extrapolation of the idea that capitalism exists because it sells products based on human exploitation. I mean, okay, me buying a chocolate bar, if it's not fair trade or like ethically sourced, and even then that's not necessarily entirely fair. Like, that's not the same as buying a video footage of someone being killed for my own pleasure, which I don't do, by the way, just to clarify that.
What you do on your time is your business.
But a lot of what we do buy or can buy is built on human suffering. It's not the point where they're being murdered by animals, but people working in cheap labor.
Yeah. We just choose to not think about it, even though we know
iPhones in China, for example, made in sweatshop factories where people have killed themselves because of the working conditions there. Like, this is the thing about Decadence being anti-capitalism. Like, when you drill down, like, to below, like, the way it's presented in the show, like, it's very clearly an analogy for things that we already deal with. Even to the point where we live in an illusion where some people are quite content with it because they've got their full bellies and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I mean it's really smart how kind of in episode 2 it makes this really clean cleavage and distinction between these class of people who are engaging in life as if it's a game, not because they necessarily need to, although at some point they're pulled into, and like you said, they themselves are exploited, the cyborgs. and made to need it. But like ostensibly, like they're not risking the things that human beings are risking, and their lives are
Fritz
much more
Lang's
comfortable.
Metropolis, maybe even.
What's that?
Bit of Fritz Lang's Metropolis, even.
No, yeah, okay, I could see
Where
that
all the
too. Right?
where all the workers are subsumed into the state until there is no distinction anymore between them. Why else do you think we see again the image of all the workers slotting into place of the Decadence logo?
And like, and you know, it's like you were saying that the human beings play their part to make the ship go, right? And like keep this whole thing alive. Like without the humans, I don't think that you could run this sort of simulation. And yet, because they're so in the dark and, you know, they don't have knowledge, they're not organized in any way, they don't have the means to do anything about it or even know about it, it's very easy to like sort of oppress them and build on top of them this sort of life of apparent luxury and sort of fun and games where, like, again, in the same battle, you know, a human being like loses his dad dies, and like if a gear was killed, they just lost their avatar. And you know, it's you could draw a lot of parallels, honestly, between like kind of what different classes of people in our world and IRL are risking in their everyday lives. And yeah, I just think it's really, really a smart show in that way.
I do have one major kind of meta criticism of this. This is where I put my pretentious anime critic beret on and start like talking in a well actually kind of voice.
Mm-hmm.
But funnily enough, we had this criticism, or rather, we discussed it in Izoken, which is can you make an anti-capitalist message inside a capitalist system of creation of content? Because here's the thing, right? The animation in these 3 episodes of the fight scenes that we get is spectacular. It looks great. It's very fluid. Like, I mean, the Sakuga guys will lose their shit over this. But the point being, though, is that this is not presented for any actual character's benefit. It's for our benefit as a consuming audience. So is that not in of itself kind of hypocritical of the show to try and sell itself in such a way by making these fights as excellent to look at as they are? So you'll ostensibly buy the Blu-ray or watch it, whatever, when the point comes out. Right. When it itself is about the exploitation of workers. And again, this is an anime which is made in an industry that thrives off exploitation.
Well, I'll just play the role now of Alexander Smith and say, what is it like? Socialist, you too live in a capitalist society. I've got you.
See, you live in a society. Yes, very interesting.
I see you too.
I'll just get back in my well.
Get paychecks and purchase things. I mean, I hear what you are saying, and I think we can. A serious conversation would need to be had if things come out about the labor of this show, but and its exploitation. But in a general sense, I mean, we already know it's the anime industry. I mean, it's an exploitative industry, and in terms of the way it's set up now. But I think where I ultimately came down on where we all ultimately came down, if I recall correctly, on Azerkin, was that the sort of capitalist system and economy is so all pervasive that to make art outside of it to communicate a message to any kind of audience is like next to impossible, because the means of production are all controlled by bosses, by big corporations and companies. The means of distribution are controlled by these for-profit companies. And maybe you could, DIY something, but without marketing and networking and distribution to get your message in front of eyeballs, in a way that would like sustain you as an artist is almost impossible to do now, if not outright impossible, for the vast majority of artists. So I think realistically, pragmatically speaking, like you have to do that kind of work inside the system. And that's going to be
how ironic.
Yeah, right. That's going to be how you reach the most people with your message.
Yeah. I suppose I should clarify that like this is not a case of the anti-capitalist message becomes invalid because of this unfortunate like design flaw
Right.
when you create a show like this. It's
Mm-hmm.
still a message worth making, but it's impossible, as you say, like to create outside of that system. And then I have to point out, like that it is being sold as a product for our consumption. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always going to be that level of hypocrisy involved in it, which is unavoidable. But I'd rather at least it be making that message and doing it as smartly as it is, where it can cover things like how disabled people are treated, or how we commodify like exploitation and violence and sell it to people as a product. Like those two things, by the way, are relatively speaking for these episodes only small parts of them, and they're still deeply meaningful and
Yeah.
really well executed. So the show gets a lot of praise from me on that, even if I do think, as I say, that it runs against that brick wall of, well, you live in a society. I'm so smart.
Yeah, that's like a constraint that I just don't know. I don't know if in our lifetimes we'll see something that can overcome that.
What we clearly need is someone outside the system who wants to, break away from their role of cleaning toilets and walls and stuff, like, become an animator, and then is not constrained by the system because they just can't recognize them. And they also need to be like, with a ponytail that's ginger colored, or whatever you want to call it, like, or that kind of hair color.
Right.
And needs to be really
Yes.
spunky, as you say.
Yep, totally. Well, this transitions nicely into a talking point I just wanted to briefly mention, in that Natsume, she's amazing. Like,
She's a great character.
So good. And part of what keeps the show really fun and makes it go down easier, because we've been talking about a lot of heady ideas, but like she's just so much fun as a character. It's a really funny show due to her being in it. There's a lot of dramatic irony.
The ponytail boy.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a good bit of slapstick in this, but
yes,
I'll credit the show by also pointing out that it doesn't diminish the actual violence that happens in the battles. Nope. I don't know how it really does that, because you'd feel like, oh, Natsume, like, can get injured in her training. Oh, we need to mention the training montage, by the way, the Gunbuster reference.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, when she's running after the Jeep. And,
yes.
There needs to be, of course, like, a 80s AMV.
Oh, my God.
You're the best around.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to ever keep you down.
Hearts on Fire or something. That would be tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm like, there is, as you say, a lot of fun and a lot of humor to be found in this show that is not tonally dissonant from its core messages or ideas. It allows those to sync.
Exactly. I mean, you kind of need to, you don't want this to become, you don't want every show you watch to become Flag. You know what I mean? Like, just so serious.
I kid.
You don't even believe that. But just like on the drier side, you know what I mean? Like she helps you kind of emotionally invest and have like an emotional anchor, and just someone to care about that's moving through this world and interacting with all these ideas. And yeah, I mean, she, like, the comedy, like you said, it doesn't, I don't think, take away from the sharpness of the criticisms the show is making, nor do I think it diminishes her as a character. Like, I don't think that she's shown just because while she's celebrating, she accidentally gets hit with a rock or something like that. I don't think she's shown to be dumb or incapable or not smart or, just sort of rolled up into some kind of girly stereotype. Like, I don't think any of that, personally, I don't think it's none of that's going on. Like, she's still this really like sensible character, this really driven character. Yes. And I think, like, for that reason, I just want to root for her. So I'm rooting for her so hard. Like, she rules.
Yeah, exactly. And she doesn't necessarily even know the truth yet of the world, but she will eventually. And £20 on the table, she will meet the cyborg version of Kaburagi.
It's gonna be like, are you a Game Boy?
What? Well, there was a Game Boy. There actually was a Game Boy lady with her Game Boy son in the plaza. I'm not even joking. I will find it for you at some point.
Are you a VMU? Do you remember the VMU?
Oh man, the Sega Game Gear one just gets bullied all the time, though.
No, yeah, but if you go look up a Dreamcast VMU, the memory cards for those actually had little screens on them.
Yeah,
they looked like little VMUs. It would be funny if like they showed up and they're like, here we are, like our real selves on the deck of the ship, and then it zoomed out and they're like the size of like a pencil compared to a human. They're so
imagine if there was a Neo Geo on there. Like, that poor fucker would just be like, bullied constantly.
It's bottom me, ranking. The Wonder Swan.
Oh, fucking hell. The Nokia N-Gage.
The N-Gage. God. But she's awesome. Can I talk a minute also about our other sort of lead character, Kaburagi? Like, holy shit. Like, listen, you've all followed me as a podcaster and opinion haver about anime for many years. I'm cool with shows about teenagers. Love them. Love the teenagers. Great characters. They come of age, and you have lots of coming of age stories, and they have so much potential and so much life out in front of them, right? But it's so good sometimes to have this older character, because like you could tell these different stories, not like, the potential of youth and, the vigor. It's like he has lived his life and he's like been struck down and had these like deep failures like scar him, and how he kind of overcomes that and is learning to live again, right? In a sense, right? Is he's like meaning has been like re-injected into his life through meeting someone else. Like, I just find this so refreshing. Just to have this point of view as this older person and this kind of different story, like a story of a middle-aged man, essentially.
He's a mentor, but he's not a disposable mentor either by the looks of it. Like, he doesn't play the Obi-Wan Kenobi role of like, or even the Force role, shall we say? Remember it?
Yeah, right.
I'm hoping that he's around for the remainder of the show,
and we get it from his perspective, right? And we do. And Obi-Wan and Thor are they're set up as these like like you said, virtuous mentors. But Kaburagi has like really fucked up. I mean, really like fucked up, and like been the reason that his friends were scrapped. And there's so much to mine, right, from that failure and his moving past it.
Well, I actually don't think it was strictly speaking his fault, but I do want to elaborate on that. Well,
I mean, it didn't have to happen, right? I mean, but yeah.
No, but there's a point to that I think is really... He blames
himself, I'll put it that way.
Yes, but there's a point to that I find really interesting. So think of it this way, right? This system like has a thing in place to root out bugs, okay? But surely if this system was as perfect as it otherwise should be, bugs would never be allowed to exist in the first place. These chips would not malfunction. The limiter would not even be a thing that people would know about. Mm-hmm. Although one might argue that in turn is put as knowledge out to the rankers as a temptation, like a trap. But then again, why do that if they had no way of knowing about it anyway? And this is the point. this system allows for free will both for the humans and the rankers. And I think that what Decadence is already hinting at through Kabaragi's defiance here, both in terms of giving the limiter information out and then his time with Natsume, is that any system that attempts to restrict free will ultimately be defeated by it. Because free will always strain against the constraints that are put against it. So I think that already is a really optimistic side to it, that like the fact that he's even capable of doing this to begin with, when conceivably as a cyborg it could have been programmed out of him, right. I think is a really neat idea.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about how that plays into this. Because this society could have been fully automated, but if that were the case, I mean, what use does a fully automated society have for a game, right? Then they wouldn't even like be the, like, you couldn't map anti-capitalism onto like a society of pre-programmed droids or whatever.
Oh yeah, because there's no consciousness. Yeah, there's no consciousness for them to experience. But that's the thing, by giving them a consciousness, inevitably that system is destined to fail, because the consciousness will desire to push against it, to push against the walls that rein it in.
Only because of bugs, Shadon. You must zap them away.
But the thing is, though, why allow bugs to exist at all? Like, that's the thing, this system cannot exist without the presence of bugs coming into play. But because those bugs come into play, the system is ultimately doomed to collapse eventually. Can't say when.
Sorry, go ahead.
Can't say when, but it will happen.
Yeah, I wonder, like, to what degree, I mean, we have no idea, but is the system trying to self-improve and rewrite itself or parts of itself to eliminate bugs? And will there be this point where it's, like, perfected, or are bugs just, it seems like bugs are just this reality. But yeah, no, this is all, there's a lot of angles that you can look at this show from, and clearly I have not looked at it from many of them. But this is fascinating show. A lot to unpack.
Well, I'm done on my talking points. Do you have any more you want to add, Doc?
Let me see. I think I've hit most of mine. Yeah, I think like all the big questions I had eventually were answered. Do you want to talk about Mikey at all? I think Mikey's a pretty fascinating character.
Well, I think he's again a part of the idea of, hey, I want to be better. I want to, although funnily enough, he runs into a kind of contradiction of like, I want to exercise my free will, but it's still wrapped in the constraint of this system, because he wants to become a more highly ranked gear. Which, to be honest, like, the fuck does that matter? We're harvesting, material. As long as we get enough of that, that's what ideally you'd want to be ranked on.
I think it's because when you're a top ranked cyborg, you don't get scrapped. There's no scrapping, right? That would be, because that's the implication I took from his speech, Shadon, of like when he said, I was going to play my part and do my thing and get scrapped, and then I became a top ranker, and I don't want to lose that, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep, like, why.
Well, I don't think there
could be a million reasons why, but that was what I kind of understood.
Yeah, I don't think there's an explicit like reward of immortality, as at least in the show. Like, but I think that like he wants to try and make that happen somehow anyway. Because I feel if that was an explicit like thing that you could get, then that would be publicly known knowledge, and we, the audience, would have been told that at some point as well. Because I think that would also then tie to Kaburagi, because it clearly seems like he's done with all this.
Right. He doesn't care. He doesn't mind if he expires, at least until he meets Natsume. I don't think he... the show actually is really great about not telling us things that would feel like... Hello there, I am Exposition Man, willing to exposit to you, this other character, a thing that you already know because the audience needs to know it. Like,
It would be
people
the
are
Neo
naturally
Geo doing
talking
that.
to each other. And if everybody knows something, why would they talk about it? So I feel like it's still on the table for it to be revealed. And I want to address Catherine's point. So she says this was disproven, and I think she means the fact that the top ranking team was destroyed when it was, or was scrapped, when it was found out that they were, how do you call it? When it was found out that they were cheating, or they thought they were cheating, that was a special circumstance. Like, right? I mean, if you're a top ranker who doesn't cheat, and my contention is, as long as you are a top ranker not breaking the rules of the system, that you will be unscrapped.
It was also mentioned the point, though, that we did have Kabaragi's screen saying how many operational years he had left. So I think there is definitely a lifespan in there. And if I may expand on
but
that.
if you're a top ranker, though, don't you keep getting the juice? That's what I mean.
I think the juice doesn't make you like immortal. I don't think it makes you last forever. I think it's like a car.
Yeah, well, this is different from being scrapped. I think like being scrapped is one thing, and then running out of the juice and your operational, going down to zero.
I have a completely different understanding. But basically, the way I see it is like you have a car, and obviously you can keep filling the car with petrol, but eventually the mechanical components will fall apart. Like, you can keep putting petrol in it, but it won't then start. You'll need to replace them or get a new car. And just from a systems-based kind of perspective, if you have a set of top rankers who are permanently like locked in that like top percent of a wedge, and don't like retire them over time, that's going to not give incentive for people to rise up the ranks. They'll be like, oh, he's never moving, he's always going to be top. Especially when gear comes into play, because gear is a factor in this, because they can keep buying new equipment. So it would make sense. It would make sense for there to be a churn over time where top rankers are retired, in my opinion.
Well, only if they fall off, I think, because if you look at this, if we're looking at it again through this lens of thinking about it in terms of capitalism, anti-capitalism, if you look at the top rankers as like big stars, like TV stars, movie stars, rock stars that people care about, it would be in the system's best interest to not let them fall away unless they were bad. And if people were losing interest because they weren't as good, they wouldn't be a top ranker because they'd naturally fall out. Remember that scene where everyone's talking about them? Clearly, it's in the system's best interest to keep top rankers around, even if there were, if they were, say, one was scheduled to be scrapped or something like that. But they were like, number one top ranker, and they were getting all this buzz and people were talking about them. Remember, they're like, oh, Mikey's so great. Mikey rules. He's the best ever. I want him to replace Kabaragi because Kabaragi's been there so long. Mikey's my new fave. Like, there's no way the system is going to get rid of somebody like that. So I think if you're a top ranker, whatever means it is, I don't even want to argue about the mechanism. It could be anything. It could just be you get the juice and the juice helps you. If you're a top ranker, I think people are going to care about you and you're going to drive interest, and therefore you will be kept unscrapped. I think it would be silly if the system scrapped top rankers. It would be dumb.
I don't entirely agree, because the thing, your analogy you made to like rock stars and such, like not everyone plays guitar or competes in the same arena. All of these cyborgs are
TV stars, movie stars.
But the thing is, not everyone's a TV or a movie star. Like for us Joe Public members, we're not competing in the same arena as a lot of these people. Whereas everyone in Decadence, like who is a cyborg, is in the same arena.
Well, they're all trying, but like, well, sure. I mean, it's a different world, but like, I'm not saying it's exactly like the human world in that way. I'm just saying that these people are famous, and famous people and of entertainment have long served capitalist regimes, in that they are incredibly good distractions for people.
Oh, for sure. But like,
and not everybody, just like our world, not everybody can become that. Only the select few are good enough to achieve the top ranking in this lovely online game. Not everybody can be Daigo Umehara. The fighting game scene is never going to kick Daigo out, because Daigo's Daigo.
Yeah. But then again, if we're going to borrow in the fighting game thing, I know people have dropped out over time because they haven't seen the top players move. So if you want to keep people invested in your like system, then I think a
It's
certain amount
probably
of
a
churn
minority.
I think a certain amount of churn is necessary.
Could be.
I think honestly, I
Well,
think this is
I
a
think
split.
that's built into the game, right? Like that's why Mikey is worried about getting overtaken because there's always new people, always more strategies. The meta's changing. The top is going to change, but he doesn't want it to. He wants to remain in the top, so that he can,
Well,
I
we
don't know.
we weren't talking about the ranking. We were talking about whether or not they lived eternally or not. And I think that I mean,
I don't think they're immortal. I just think they won't be scrapped while they're a top ranker. Why would any top ranker be that was obeying the rules be scrapped?
it's the well, I mean, when I say scrapped, I mean because their equipment comes to the end of its operation. Like, I think we're honestly splitting hairs over this, and if I'm quite honest, I don't think it really all that matters right now, unless it gets brought up in more detail when that will be clarified. Yep, yeah.
I'm really glad that we got to. I'm really glad we got to skip the arc of that could have happened, right? In the first episode, if the first episode was lengthened out to 2 episodes, like I could see this Natsume having this sort of small character arc of like, oh, I hate my job, it's so shit, and then slowly over the course of an hour or two, like learning that it's kind of good and fulfills a place in society, and like, oh, actually, like that happens really quickly. It speeds through that stuff, and I was so glad that it did.
5 year time though to get away from scrubbing the side of the wall. Like 5 years of constantly cleaning shit.
Also,
No thanks.
Fennel is the worst. I'm just gonna put that out there. Fennel
Oh
is
God.
such a creep. I'm so sad he's still alive.
Ah well, he'll get his eventually. You know.
All right, so that's
All
all
right.
the different. That's all the big things I have. I feel like I could keep talking about like the details of this world.
But that's the thing though, the details are worth noting.
Yeah,
So all right, that brings us to the end of our talk. Shall we rate the episodes then, Doc?
yeah, yeah.
Oh boy.
The block,
The block. My God.
the block of
I
green goo. How would you rate it?
man, I have been legitimately impressed by this show. Like, for what seems like a very rote kind of Cabaneri Attack on Titan, big monsters killed by people with zero G gear kind of bullshit. Like, at least it's doing something different and interesting with it. Like
That's so little of the show, isn't it?
well,
That's so neat.
that's it. Yeah, like I mean, it still looks really nice, which is both a positive and a negative, as I've discussed. But overall, a positive, I would say. But like my biggest complaint, for example, about Attack on Titan was I did not give two flying shits about any of the characters, and I didn't understand like there was a wider theme or idea of it beyond the rich people, like get the thing. And I'm like, okay, yeah, can we do more with that rather than it just being like about how we got to go fight this fucking thing out in the like. I didn't care about any of it,
Blob.
but
Yes.
but I care about the characters here, and I care about the ideas that it's toying with as well. And I think it's doing some interesting things with it, where like it's not just the big broad stroke ideas, but also Natsume's arm, the commodificate, the videos. Like there are little details that help building up this wider idea of an anti-capitalist message, which is really really neat. For a first-time studio, a relatively new studio, like the whole production has been very impressive. My only real complaint, as I say, is just I think the exposition is on a tiny bit too thick. I feel like you could have jettisoned the climate change thing, although one might argue that's a part of it because it's a false narrative. We will have to see. And I think that can wear thin depending on your tolerance for that amount of exposition, to be quite honest. But overall, very impressed with it. I'm going to give these 3 episodes 4.5 Mountain Dew rivers out of 5.
So I loved these episodes a lot. I think this is such a creative and fresh show. There's a lot of I guess anime stereotypes are sort of familiar character beats. There are some of those, but like so much kind of wrapped around the show, and so many of the details I find really fascinating and different. And there's like such potential for this to go places. Just thinking about the show, the amount I've thought about it since I've watched it, and the amount I'll probably keep thinking about it, really kind of overshadows a lot of anime of recent vintage that I've seen. So yeah, man,
it is an infinitely superior post-apocalyptic show than Listeners.
oh, totally. Like a lot of the sci-fi that I've watched in recent years, I mean, not all of it, but like a lot of it, sort of, it just is so kind of mediocre in its aspirations compared to a show like this.
The show is also fun to boot as well. Like, you get to have its cake and eat it.
Totally. And it's this, the storytelling, I think, is really great. Like, I didn't really have issues with the exposition. So yeah, I mean, I think I might have even wanted more exposition, just because, like, I feel like talking about it and everything, it has helped me feel like I can kind of get my arms around the world and all of its mechanisms and things like that. But I feel like that's a grasp that I could lose at any moment. There's so many moving parts and so many layers to the show. But gosh, fun characters, beautiful looking show. There's not a whole lot to criticize. So yeah, I'm gonna go for the block of 3. I'm gonna go 4.75 paipus out of 5, and I'm gonna post a link on in chat here to Mark from Oh No Anime's Twitter, and I want everybody to tweet at Mark, who's at Vermillionaire, Vermillionaire ending in a 3, Vermillionaire, and say Hiroshi Seko is good, because that dude in our Mob Psycho pod last year that I did with Anime is Lit and Mark, he like raked Hiroshi Seko over the coals. And look, is any CV perfect in which you work and live in a capitalist society and have to, make ends meet? No, he probably took on some projects that were bad and they didn't want to. But let me just tell you, the last 3 years, this dude just crushed it. And so everybody tweet Mark and say, Mark, Hiroshi Seko is good. You're wrong.
But that being said, like, you and I have scored these first 3 episodes very highly, but it's the same thing as happened before when we've scored the first 3 episodes very high, which is now it's got to keep that going. It's got to deliver. You've set up a lot of good things here, Decadence. I am legitimately excited for what's to come. Do not fuck this up.
How long? Do we know how long this is? I'm going to look it up as we talk.
I'm assuming it's a 12 episode.
Let's see. So I'm going to the Mal page. July 8th to question mark. No one knows.
Right, so it's a 500 episode. That's it. We're set for stream of thought for the next several years. We're all good. Great.
Yes.
Well, you know what? I'm certainly up for what comes next. That's for sure. But it really, like, that's the thing. Like, you've got my attention. You have piqued my interest. Show, stick the landing, please. Like, there are very few shows I can think of that I personally seen where they ended as strongly as they started. Aizoken, for example.
This is the anime problem.
It really is the anime problem. It can be done, though, and I really hope it does, because I think this show could be something quite special.
Yeah.
Hell, it could even be batting in the same league as Aizoken. I didn't think I would say that. Like, I
this
thought,
year?
I thought that as far as I was concerned, the only way I would watch something better than Aizoken that came out this year, especially given what's happening in the wider world, would be something that wasn't released this year. I was thinking that the only thing I would be able to compare Aizoken to would be Utena, because I've been watching that. But no, we have something that came out this year that could potentially be as good. I very highly doubt it'll be better, because that's a fucking tall order. But it could very well compete, and that has me really, really excited.
Yeah, and a show that's like headed up by not these like legendary like Masaki Yuasa or Ikuhara or Tomino, or someone like that, like Tachikawa has like, you know, been around, but like relative to those folks, he's a fairly new name. Like I don't really see anything that is older than the mid to late 2000s in his CV. Maybe these episodes of Bleach, depending on when Bleach was, but certainly I don't see any 90s content. And so, yeah, something so good made by these, directors and writers that have been on the come up here lately is like cool to see.
All right. Well, on that note, ladies, gentlemen, MVs, we will wrap up for the evening. If you happen to be listening to this on Free for Air and you think to yourself, holy crap, I want to hear more of this stuff from these two fine gentlemen, then I might have, a little tip for you, which is to just, set your web browsers to patreon.com/Warui Deshou. Get yourself on the $3 tier or higher to continue getting involved with Second Stream and Decadence as we go forward. If you get on the $5 tier, you can even join in on our Rakugo Shinjo discussion.
Yeah, Rakugo, baby.
Oh
It's
boy,
coming.
we've got some quality shows lined up for this season. Like what we thought was going to be a dry spell has been turned out quite good. But definitely do check out our Patreon for all the benefits that come with that, including Discord access. We do group watches, all sorts of good stuff. Got a very lively and wonderful community here. To our existing patrons, you have my ongoing and eternal gratitude for your support. I really, really cannot thank you enough from the bottom of my heart. It's very humbling that people would be willing to pay to listen to me. I mean, people usually pay me to shut up, not to talk more. So there you go.
And can I make a brief clarification?
Yes.
Just, I was thinking about, when we were talking about Natsume's hand and that I was talking about, tropes to avoid and a writer talking about how disabled folks might feel. And like, I just want to be clear that hopefully no one thought that the things that she, the writer, was saying or that I am saying apply across the board to all disabled persons. That group is by no means a monolith. There could be people that feel all sorts of different ways about themselves, about their disability. She was speaking in generalities, and she is someone who, if she is not a disabled person, actually, then she's quite close to them and has spoken with many. So I was attempting to relay a topic and a discussion I thought was interesting, but just, a little note-see there that I don't, clearly speak for all disabled persons and their relationships, their disability.
Nor do I. And I would advise again that, you seek out opinions and perspectives on this show from that angle as well. I would be curious if they do more with that in the show's run. Maybe Natsume loses the hand, perhaps, I don't know, but we will find out. And indeed, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next all around from Decadence. So do feel free to join us on that. We will be back in 3 weeks' time to cover, I think it's about 3 weeks, isn't it? Or is it 2?
Yep. Yeah, that'll be when we next revisit Decadence.
That's right. So we'll be there to cover it the same week that episode 6 comes out.
Yes.
Until then, of course, ladies, gentlemen, MBs, thank you very much for joining us again, whether you're doing so live or after the fact. Always good to have people along. And as we often say on this podcast, embrace show everyone. It's the end of the universe. You have a cracking evening. Take care of yourselves.
Catch you all at the Barakamon tomorrow.
And, yes.
Bring back the brothers.